Haard Facts. We have our special guest, Saif, joining us from Harvard University. He's a professor of racial relations. Right now he's writing a paper focusing on racial discrimination and racism. So a lot that we've been talking about in this podcast is American exceptionalism, what it is, what we think about it, and kind of like why it maybe isn't so true. So, Saif, can you tell us like your opinion on the matter, if you agree with it or not?
Actually, I disagree with American exceptionalism. I believe that that ideal is incorrect and inaccurate due to past history and current history. For example, during the late 1800s, the United States claimed to be a democratic republican, which means that it offers inalienable rights to all society, all men specifically. So certain inalienable rights, like voting, were actually restricted by the government. According to Eric Foner, a Columbia University historian, because of the 15th Amendment, you can't pass laws saying blacks can't vote, which is what they wanted to do. But the 15th Amendment allowed restrictions that were non-racial. This was a pretty obvious way to allow whites to vote and not blacks. So essentially what he's saying was, even though they did pass the 15th Amendment, which granted voting rights to African Americans, they were still restricted due to other things like literacy tests, grandfather clauses, or poll taxes. So, therefore, blacks did not really have the right to vote, and they were not granted equal rights. Therefore, is America really exceptional? Because wouldn't an exceptional country give all of its citizens equal opportunity and equal voting rights?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I feel like throughout our history we've seen that, like the Caucasian male gets the rights and there's no limits on it, but every time we've seen progress with minority groups, there seems to be like a limit or an impression on it. So is this idea, this concept, is this still happening today, or is this just a hundred years ago?
Actually, this idea is happening today. In a very prominent crisis actually, with the Flint, Michigan water crisis. Flint, Michigan was predominantly African American population, and as a result, the government had leaky water pipes that transferred unsafe water to its citizens. And due to this, many African Americans were harmed and got sick and ill due to the bad water. The government didn't deem it necessary to fix this water problem because that population of African Americans were so low class that they weren't benefiting from their votes or from anything from that city. So as a result, many of the population got sick and injured from this water.
So do you think that if this was a predominantly Caucasian city, if there was a different demographic, do you think that this issue would have been seen as more serious and needing to be fixed faster?
Oh, most definitely. In a predominantly white city, this problem would have been fixed within days, like despite anything. Like just because they're white, they would have been treated much better than that black population. For example, in Ann Arbor, if a similar crisis were to happen, that problem would be fixed within days no matter what.
So that's a really interesting point about like the treatment within the classes still today. So do you think that this is seen in like multiple aspects? I've heard a lot of stories about people being scared that they're going to get pulled over to get a ticket when you're white, but when you're black, you're scared, for your life. Like, how are we still seeing this today?
Well, in New York, 80% of stops made by police were of people of Latino or even African American race. And of those 80%, 85% of those people were frisked by the police, whereas if a stop was made for a white person, they were only frisked 8% of the time, which is a substantially decreased percentage. And that could be in part due to prejudice or stereotypes of African Americans and how they're more likely to be violent or similar aspects of these prejudices.
So, like, we're seeing this just continued pattern of, I would say, oppression throughout American history, not just history in general, of different races specifically focusing on African Americans. We're seeing it, in voting. We're seeing it in just their living style. Is there any other examples that you would like to discuss from your studies?
Well, actually, what I've during my studies, I conducted a few research about the sentencing process for African Americans, and when given sentences, African Americans were 10% more likely than Caucasians to receive the maximum sentence compared to their white counterparts. And as a result, these African Americans were discriminated against even more because since they received maximum sentences, people thought, oh, look, he received maximum sentence, he must have been bad. And that transfers over to other African Americans. So this next person that realizes, oh, he received the maximum sentence, they'll assume that the next person will receive it, and so on, and the cycle will just keep on happening. So African Americans are always going to be discriminated against.
So basically, like, we're seeing that this just constant oppression that's happening, and it's, I would say, would you say it started with like the founding of our country?
Yes.
So we claim to be a democracy, we claim to be a country found on equality and freedom for all, but I'm not really seeing this sense of freedom for all. Like, I don't know how a like country could be so exceptional when we're treating our citizens differently based on the pigments in their skin. Thank you for joining us today, Safe. Next time on Haard Facts.